doesn't sound like he's on.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Pentucket Regional School Committee meeting on July 23rd, 2019. Roll call, Lane Adams.
Here.
Joanna Blanchard.
Here.
Bill Buell.
Here.
Emily Dwyer.
Here.
Marie Falzani.
Here.
Dick Hodges.
Here.
Lisa O'Connor. Here. Chris Redding is not here, and Dina Trotter is not here.
3.9.
We'd all like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I receive a motion to accept the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Can I receive a motion to accept the minutes of the Business and Finance Subcommittee meeting of June 18th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Can I receive a motion to accept the minutes from the business meeting of June 18th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Public comment, there's nobody here. Hello. Any comment?
Donovan's here.
Okay. Superintendent's news?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I have several things just to put forth in front of you. One, I know this is going to happen and I'm going to forget names frequently, but I think it's important for us to recognize we had two retirees that recently passed. First, Lane Costa, who was a long-time middle school media specialist, librarian, and just recently passed. And of course, Joe Darrow, who was an original teacher here at the high school, and he passed away. So I just wanted to pass that along, and I know when that has happened, we've always sent along our thoughts and prayers, so I just wanted to make mention of that. I think it's important to recognize that.
Actually, one of the teachers that I was talking with this summer was wondering if that's information I had, just because.
Got passed along.
Yeah, but do we have a vehicle, the same way that we would say a snow day, do we have a vehicle to let the entire staff know? So I'm just offering that as a suggestion.
That's a good question. What I've been doing, when I find out, I put it out on Twitter. I did not have Lane's until later, but I did have Joe Darrow's quickly. And I put that out because it had not only that, but also the wake and funeral times and service times. But yeah, Twitter is where, and for those watching on TV, that's at Pentucket RSD. If you follow that, that's where we'll put that information
Okay,
out.
thanks.
Sure. So that's it. Second thing I wanted to mention was you've probably heard about a budget came out of committee. And I went through all the cherry sheets. We have groups, MASC and MASS and MARS. All three of those groups are good about giving things to us, but wanted to let you know, it doesn't matter which school district we look at around us, all of us received the absolute minimum of a $30 increase, with the exception of Newburyport, if this goes through. And if you want to know what impact that has, so for Pentucket, it impacts us 0.5%, which is the lowest of any school district around. So this, whatever you hear on the news, I'm just equipping you and arming you with, we are held harmless. $30 is the minimum increase. That's what we're going to get. And for us, that represents a 0.5% increase. And everyone in the state knows that our expenses go up more than 0.5% every single year. So again, this budget will see the burden passed on to the taxpayers, though the minimum contribution for us also increased. And that's how much has to get paid by the towns, and that ours also went up the smallest amount, right along ours and North Reading's. North Reading and Pentucket were very similar in both these categories. So I just wanted to share that news with you when you hear all these great, wonderful things. With that is the alleged full funding of circuit breaker at 75%, a modest increase on regional transportation. What that means to us, we'll find out later, because that is always subject to appropriation, which means it can be taken away from us just as quickly as it's been given to us. So I wanted to let you know that. Third, we haven't heard much about the building projects, so I just wanted to let everybody know that we're in still design. We're still in the design process. In the meantime, Greg's been doing a lot of work, gathering paperwork, all the necessary paperwork from all the towns. Of course, we'll have an item on our agenda here. We'll talk about the bond rating, getting out information to get a bond rating, so we can put things out to bid for the bond. But as the year progresses, as this year progresses, each meeting, I'll give you an update as to where things are. Right now, we're still stuck outside with locker rooms and all sorts of fun stuff like that, but it's, I think by the end of the fall, start of the winter, we'll be close to 60% completed with the design of the building. And finally, if you haven't seen on Twitter, every year a duck appears in the middle school courtyard. Every single year. And today was the day that we opened up the doors and the mother duck goes out, followed by the 9 ducklings. It is an event. We put up a barricade so the ducks go and they follow and they go right out to the front. So Pentucket the duck, along with the other ducks there, Mr. Kelly and I have already made plans to dress up like characters for Make Way for Ducklings for next year. Because it's a pretty
Now,
neat,
is that
on board with that,
before
Brent?
or
You
after
wanna know that?
contract renewal?
yeah, that's,
I'm not paying for costumes.
Well, I'll buy yours.
Oh, I'm not wearing one, that's a definite, and I'm not paying for theirs.
Okay to have it put on you too.
but it is a really cool thing
Yeah.
to see happen right, because that courtyard's closed in. It's really neat to see that happen there, and then have the ducks go through the school and out the front to go off into the wetlands there.
That's actually happened with students in session as well.
It's late this year.
Yeah.
They said it was late. It's
Oh,
usually
that's great.
Before the kids get out.
It's a great
Yeah.
experience for the kids to
Yeah.
see.
So we've got, if you check it out on Twitter, you'll see that we've posted
Well, we were all
the
down there. It
videos.
took about.
They hadn't waxed the floor there yet, had they?
Barrier.
I don't think they have yet.
All right, good. I don't want them walking across a freshly waxed floor.
Crackers, and they
Yeah.
would follow the crackers all the way out.
Mary Beth Clark came right down with food.
So that is all I have for,
Okay.
So the next
All the
item under new
problems some
business
schools
is
have, I
year in
suppose we should
review,
be grateful.
code of conduct.
We only
sure.
get these little
So the
things
year in
from
review, code and conduct, we put that out there last time with all the different events. There was the code of conduct as well. I was just curious if anyone, after reviewing that and reflecting, if anyone had any thoughts or comments they wanted to share, things they wanted me to add or take out.
See any hands? Nope. Good.
This is a fabulous document. I've read it from stem to stern, and I'm in 100% support of the document. But here's the challenge. When I replaced Jack Willett, apparently some teachers found out I was on the school committee, and all of a sudden I've got a half a dozen teachers sitting in my kitchen, and so now I'm taking notes. The first story was about a 7th grade boy telling a teacher to go F herself when she gave him an instruction. Now, the discipline for that was a serious lunch detention. Now, I've read the entire middle school handbook, and that also is a wonderful document. There is nothing in there about a serious lunch detention. And then I recalled last week we were talking about the hat. We had some mixed conversation about hats. So I went back to my notes and I realized there was another story because another teacher, a high school student was entering the middle school, and this other female teacher asked the high school student to remove his hat. He told her to go F herself. Now, I don't think that was ever resolved, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But the fact that that kind of communication comes from a student to a staff member says a great deal about the culture at the high school and the middle school, what we allow, what we don't allow. By the way, I shared this with a friend of mine who's a retired high school teacher. He said, "What do you mean 2-3 days of detention?" He said, "That would have been a 5 with me." At any rate, the next story is the high school student comes in, and this teacher says, "Please remove your hat." So, if she came down, and she did, she went to the office, to the administration, and if that was in my office, I would have been on the phone with the high school principal in less than 60 seconds. And I would have announced that this student is no longer welcome at the middle school until I meet with his parents and the student and the teacher with a letter of apology. Then I'll let him come back in. We all make mistakes. I don't believe anything was done, and the tragedy of this was not days, but for weeks, this high school student sought out that teacher's room and came down and tipped his hat every single day.
Dick, can I ask a question? How does this work into the year in review?
Oh, no, he's doing the code of conduct.
No, I'm doing code of conduct,
Okay.
which is fabulous. What I'm saying is,
It's one thing to have it in writing, it's another thing to execute.
yeah, this is just a piece of paper. If you are not going to have, I mean, we literally have administrators who aren't following their own handbooks.
So one of the nice things that we did, I had a great meeting with a group of teachers. I've certainly spoken with the union reps as well, and met with the administrators, and there's a couple different avenues we're looking at, because one of the things I wanted to make sure of was that we were all talking the same language, and that there was, I put in an incident, and I know when it's been addressed, I know what was done. Because that is by far the number one complaint that I've heard from teachers not sure what's going on, from parents not always
They
understanding.
don't feel supported.
So there's an app, so I did a lot of calling around, people I worked with. We had one solution that I had used, which I think is excellent, but now we have 2 pieces. One is an application, very affordable, and it not only tracks, so if something's done in the classroom, even if it doesn't go to the administration of the building, it's documented. And then when something happens, if administration looks at the behavior pieces, they can see and track all the behavior, not just stuff that was reported to them, but what also has been happening in the class and what actions have been taken by the teacher or other teachers and also by administrators. And that is an excellent software, because as soon as, if I'm the school administrator, if I meet with you and I go through the process, talk to your parents, and I levy a consequence, I put that in, immediately the teacher receives a document saying exactly what's happened for a consequence. Everyone's on the same page. And if there's conflict, there's an opportunity to talk about that. But we also have a second part, which is now that we have shifted out of, school loop, now that we're leaving school loop and into Infinite Campus. Infinite Campus does a similar feature as well. So we're trying to decide which one the teachers and administrators are most comfortable with. It sounds like everyone is okay with what's written in the document. And now it's about the execution of it. And particularly at the middle school and the high school, we want to make certain that when things open up, and the middle school has been very vocal about this, they want to make sure everything is done consistently in equity and with equity. We know that there are instances where sometimes there's a lot of things happen at once, but that just means you might have to have multiple administrators get involved. But that communication piece back and forth, the teachers have said they want to be supportive, they want to be a part of the solution, and I applaud that. I mean, that's absolutely what we want. And I think that you always want that important, very, very important triangle, the parent, the student, and the teacher. Administrators should always be on the outside. They're involved, but that relationship between those 3 has to exist for it to be successful.
Bill?
I think, trying to look at it holistically, I'm going to assume that when you meet with the administrators, that they are going to be hearing that there is this administrative insistence on consistent policies. So using what Dick brought up as maybe a template, we're moving forward now. And this type of reaction is no longer acceptable. So I think that I certainly share Mr. Hodges' concerns. As a teacher, I've heard them myself. But I think we are moving forward, and I know that in the policy meetings that I've heard, These have been issues that have been raised, and I don't want to sound so formal all the time. I would find it impossible to believe that when school starts in the fall, the administrators will not be aware of this change in policy.
Right, absolutely, and even more to the point, we will have our administrative retreat on the 19th and the 20th, August 19th and August 20th. One of those sessions, we will actually have, our attorneys are going to be going over investigations and discipline, what can and cannot be done. And then the following day, we're going to invite teachers, department chairs, and all the administrators will be there anyway, but just to go over this exact thing about from start to finish, what is the process, who's responsible for what, so everyone's on the same page.
And not to say that, put this with a smile, but I'm looking forward to hearing about how this works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, and also I'd say, if you have a student with there's behavioral issues, this type of software, whether an Infinite Campus or the online app, that's invaluable data. Because now you're seeing patterns of, is it time, is it teacher, is there what is the social emotional issue that's going on? And what are the triggers? And that's valuable for not just the teacher, the administrator, it's valuable for the parents, it's valuable for any doctors, therapists that the parents might be working with.
I'll come back to you. Marie?
Yeah. Okay. I thought the code of conduct was pretty decent. Again, I shared this concern last time, that when we sit in subcommittee for policy, we put a lot of effort into the policies for what should dictate what runs the district. And a lot of times we're told, well, that belongs in code of conduct, that belongs in code of conduct. We take good measure to make sure that we follow mask policy and we follow, most importantly, mask law. So I would like to see it referenced in here, like there's a bullying policy. Well, don't just say that, well, the district will cite it and say there's a district policy, J blah, 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 that refers to this. And to Dick's point, yeah, we're on school committee, but I'm also a parent in the district, and I've heard the same nightmare stories. Well, why does this child get away with an arm's length of behavior? Kids watch it. They see them getting away with the behavior. They see that it's in the code of conduct. They're still getting away with it. They see it's in the policy. They still get away with it. One kid steps out of line one time, and the book is thrown at them. And there's a part in this code of conduct that says that it'll be at the principal and vice principal's discretion to take case by case. So I guess I'm leery of that. To Dick's point, who's monitoring to make sure that justice is being done case to case? That the same mitigating circumstances, the same due diligence is being given to each child. That's a concern for me too with this.
Okay.
Emily?
My question back to the hats is that not that any of that behavior is even a little bit acceptable, but that when you have kids switching between buildings and in the middle school hats are not acceptable and high school hats are acceptable, I mean, hats I don't think it's an issue for me that they're acceptable at the high school, for
Yeah, I
sure.
think so.
But I just think that piece, that just reminded me that I do think that little inconsistencies like that, when we have kids going between buildings, and even when they're all in the same building, and they're crossing into like shared space, is gonna need to be addressed.
Yeah.
I don't need you
So
to
we've-
address it now.
We've spoken with the administrators about that as well, and my opinion on this is whatever is the stricter of the two is the one you follow. So Mr. Kelly and Mr. Seymour are both aware of that. And, you know, for the children, it's code shifting, right? You know you're going into this building, you know how this building has different rules.
For sure.
Yeah.
Is the end of the year report, which generally is done by the assistant principal in terms of behavior, discipline, is the software that you now have going to be helpful for you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then my final thing, I'm encouraging you when you do meet with the team of administrators that you give yourself permission to use a Bill Belichick quote, "Do your job."
Yep. Yeah, so it's good. I mean, right at this point right now, anything preceding this upcoming year, if we wanted discipline information, everything's done on paper.
I'm liking it.
And now we have, well, actually, Ms. Funk, who works with Mr. Conway, has to give me access to be able to see that. But we have immediate access. A couple of the schools kept track of all their discipline, which is extremely useful because you see patterns. You know when the hot times are in a school year, you know when the low times are. And there's variances, but for the most part, it's consistent. And knowing those patterns and preparing for those, preparing your school and your school culture for that, very, very important.
If I may, to speak to a couple of points, I think
is the data collection in Infinite Campus will allow us to address a lot of this from a bigger picture, but from a communication perspective as well, being able to get consistent communication to staff members and receive it at the same time. The other component that, it isn't outlined in a code of conduct. It's not part of Infinite Campus. It just speaks to, I think, some of the underlying concerns are, so what are the expectations for administration to take the time to work through problems and follow through? And a lot of times it's easy, Mr. Hodges, in a situation you described to say, well, that's it. You're suspended for 3 days for that behavior. And you do the paperwork and whatever you need to do.
I'll bet you it never happens again.
But, well, see, and I'd say I disagree, because the work is not done there. And oftentimes it's done, the suspension happens, and from an adult's perspective, many of us feel as though the problem's resolved.
You don't think having the parents in and a letter of apology?
No, not in a lot of those
some closure?
situations.
Depends.
Well, now you're adding a little bit more. You're adding the time to go through an apology. You're adding the process of going through some closure. You're adding processes to that.
I'm
And I
looking
think
for all of it.
So, and this is what I'm saying, I think those things are not outlined, and nor would they necessarily be outlined in a code of conduct, in any of that. But yet that becomes the expectation for us to communicate with our administrators, say, this is what teachers are looking for. This is our expectation, and this is what students and families need at the same time. And if there are differences in the way you managed a situation with one student and another, to the degree that you can discuss some of that. There's also, you run into confidentiality, and you can't necessarily always explain those differences to people, which is frustrating to people, and we recognize that. But to the degree that you can, taking the time to have those follow-up conversations, to ensure that the apology really occurs, and that communication, that the teaching side of discipline happens. And we just collectively, even as parents, we frequently probably don't do the good job of that, right? Because we're busy, we're quick, we've got to deal with things, and we move on, and yet we forget that for a lot of kids, just because you signed the paper and you checked the boxes, you did all that, it's really not done. And there's more to be done with each of those situations. And that's really, it falls on us to work with the administration to learn to be more comprehensive in that approach. And those are really, that's the underpinnings of restorative justice. That's really, it takes more time than simple discipline.
I've never considered a suspension closure, ever. So I would not disagree with repairing those and getting a fresh start. And I'll have to repeat, in every situation that I ever suspended, the word got out in school, and I never had that issue for the rest of the year. The kids talk to each other. They know. And what concerns me is, do the kids know who's really in charge? Because I'm wondering who the adults are in the building. And if kids are allowed to get away with this, that's just a step in their direction.
I would say if there's a sign that's a really, really good sign, it's that the feedback from the parents, the feedback from the teachers, and that so many teachers were willing to meet with me after school to talk about this, and I was walking them through what the work we were doing and what we were looking to accomplish, and that they're going to be incredibly supportive of that. That's going to go a long way. And we've said we're doing checkpoints. So when we open up the school year, after 30 days, we check back in with each other, the teachers, to make sure, what do we need to do better? What do we need to tighten up? What are we doing too much of?
Good call.
Because it will be a year where we establish that foundation, and then everything else just comes afterwards, and it just becomes part of the culture.
Another thing about the code of conduct, and I don't know that this necessarily belongs in the code of conduct, but it's definitely something I'd like to see discussed with administrators, and I agree with Brent, like restorative justice is great, and talking to a child about their actions and why they weren't right is great. But when a child's been bullied, someone should reach out to them too. And someone should make sure that that child is okay, because I think a lot of times it's, well, you have to just understand that we're taking care of it. And like you said, you can't, it's a confidentiality thing, I understand that, but you need to make the child being, threatened, bullied, harassed, you got to make them feel like something's being done, and someone's listening to them, and that there is guidance for them to talk to, and there's someone that cares about them too, not just about rehabilitating the child doing the
You need
action.
to have the target and the offender
Yeah.
Boy, they're always, absolutely.
Any other questions?
So conduct and dress code are always two big hot topics, but with conduct.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Merrimack PTO donation.
Sure, so the Merrimack PTO has decided that they are going to go and purchase Chromebooks for 20, so how much was the exact amount? $6,469.56. They're going to buy 24 new Chromebooks. The Merrimack PTO, all the PTOs and PTAs have been very, very supportive of our elementary schools. So because that's over the $5,000 threshold, we actually need, in order for the donation to happen, approval of the school committee.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the application to the MFOB to issue state qualified bonds. Greg, do you want to speak on that?
Sure. The MFOB is the Mass Finance Oversight Board. What this basically does is, although we're going through a rate-setting process, and as we all know, we'll be borrowing quite a bit of money over the next few years, it's a way that the state will also back you, as well as having the taxpayers back you. By doing this and going before them, it delays our process of getting money, nothing to do with design or construction. It'll delay the process of getting money. I thought it wouldn't be till September. It looks like they're going to have a meeting in August, which would be great. And if they approve us, what happens is when we go to the rate-setting board, they usually give you one notch better on your rating scale because you have that guarantee. And the state takes the money that pays the bonds out of your local aid, out of our Chapter 70 money. We do that now with one of our borrowings, with the track. They take, when the payment's made twice a year, they just take it out of our local aid. This one might be a little more challenging because the payments will probably be about what we get in local aid on those months, so it might be a little more challenging, but I think it'll still work out. But what this vote does that we're asking you to do tonight allows me to go sit before the board and get their approval at that meeting in August. And it doesn't necessarily mean we have to take them up on it. So it'll run a parallel process to the rest of the borrowing that we'll be going through on the rate setting processes. And we can make a determination at that point whether or not it's worth it to take them up on their offer or just go on our merry way on their own. But this at least gives us the option.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to support Mr. LeBrec's proposal.
Okay. So
Second.
I'm going to read the proposal that we're going to vote on.
Oh, that might help.
The appropriate officials of the district are authorized to file an application with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Municipal Overall Oversight Board to qualify under Chapter 44A of the general laws. The bonds or notes authorized to be issued pursuant of a vote of the district passed March 19th, 2019 for $146,332,328 for design and construction of the middle high school to provide such information and execute documents as the Municipal Oversight Board of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts may require. Okay. So, do you want to go through the vote again? As we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the J policies. Marie, I'm going to turn it over. Do you want me to read them off, or?
Sure, if you want to. Just this list?
Yeah, some of them are in for a second reading. So do you want to do them all as a whole, or one individual, or how do you want to do it?
Does anyone have any questions about them?
If we do them as individuals, can we label whether it's a second or a third?
Yeah, we can do that, yeah.
Because I think we have to document that when we present
We'll
it.
just do them one at a time.
They're asterisk, so on
Yeah,
this,
in
on
the
this
comments.
page,
Yeah, they're
the
labeled.
second reads are have an asterisk.
Oh, it's already done. Thank you.
So
Trying to be efficient.
So,
Can I move that
first,
we approve, if we don't have comments, that we approve the whole set of them, whether it's the first or second read?
okay, so does anybody have comments on any of them? Joanna?
I do, and I actually have a question about the minutes for the previous meeting, because it does say that we approved JFBB, JFBBA, and JICH, but I think, is JFBB still in the packet tonight?
It is because there was a change that had been made, but it hadn't shown, like this, if you look at JFBB in
Right.
school choice, the last meeting we had, it said A, cost of tuition, number one, the cost of tuition for non-resident students will be set. Before it had said born, and someone had asked that it say will be set, so we made that change and
Yeah.
came back to it so that people could see the
Yeah,
change.
no, I'm just trying to figure out what we need to do, because it says that we approved it, and so now we're going,
I
because
can
it
go
says,
back and look at the minutes.
yeah, right in the
Been
minutes,
approved.
it says we approved.
Because I thought we tabled everything last.
No, you're right. So I think, if my memory serves me correct, it was, we approved
Okay.
it based on the corrections,
On what
pending
we
the
knew it was
corrections. being
Right.
supposed to say,
Okay.
even though we hadn't actually seen it.
Right, so technically, we've
is
already
the first
approved
one. Okay.
JFBB, so we shouldn't reapprove that one, I think, tonight, because we've already done it.
Okay.
Okay, so the exclusion of JFBB.
Are there any other questions on these?
I do have questions on some specific policies. So what would be the best
What
way to
would be
do
the
this? Do you
first,
want?
the first one, guys, going down the list?
Okay, let me just pull them up.
If we're going to go down the list, can we just move them one at a time then? For example,
I think that would be
Okay.
easiest.
move JHD, please.
Okay, so can I receive a vote to approve policy JHD, exclusions and exemptions from the school admission?
Dick and, was it Emily?
Second, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? The next policy is JIC, student discipline. Do I receive a motion?
Move JIC.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? The next one is JICFA, hazing.
Move JICFA.
Second.
Any discussion? Joanna?
So my question on this is that it says students are obligated to report to the principal, but then it also says students are obligated to report directly to the police department. So I was just curious if that is in fact true, or is it sufficient that students just report to the principal and then it's the principal's responsibility to report to the police department? Because then it says, you know, if the student hasn't reported to the police department, that they could be disciplined. So I was just wondering what the real practice is at the school.
We do have a police officer in both buildings, so when I read that, I wondered if a student would feel comfortable enough going to the officer in addition to the administrator. That's how I interpreted it.
Versus I would think that the student should feel comfortable just going to the principal and then feeling like it's done. I mean, like if I was a student, I
No,
think I'd go to the principal and not feel like
So
I have to go to the
No, I
principal.
understand your side.
So what is the practice?
Which part is?
Yeah,
The second paragraph, do you know what-
yeah, I mean,
Just
the
this?
expectation would be that students would probably report it to the principal.
Right,
However, if they were to report it directly to law enforcement, there's certainly no consequences for doing that.
right. It's just that it says students are obligated by law to report to the police department. That's in the second paragraph. It doesn't sound quite right to me.
Okay, so it's the last sentence.
So
of
I
the
think
second
it's more
paragraph.
employees of the district are obligated by law to report incidents of hazing to the
Right.
police.
But
Okay.
students not to.
So if we
It's not-
cross out students and,
I mean, students are obligated to report it,
Right,
To school officials.
either or,
yeah.
whereas employees
Have to go to law enforcement.
must report to law enforcement.
yeah, they're mandated
Students in the
reporters.
end.
Yeah, and this doesn't fall under mandated reporting laws, but it's a similar sort of, so when you work in an institutional setting, you can have what's called institutional reporting. So in this situation, it would operate similarly, that if, for instance, a teacher were to observe or became aware of, they could report it directly to law enforcement,
Yeah.
but certainly we would want them really to report to administration first. If at any given point they felt as though administration did not take appropriate steps, they then can report directly to law enforcement. The mandated reporting laws are different from this, but there's a similar similar impact of the reporting that would be required.
So I'd feel comfortable approving this as long as that last sentence in the second paragraph just started with employees of the district are obligated to report to the police department.
Okay.
So
So can we
I-
vote on it with that change, or do we need a second reading?
So I think I just have to amend the motion so that the
exclude
policy is
words.
going to say,
Yep.
just exclude the word students.
Students,
Yeah.
and in the second
So
paragraph,
moved.
last sentence.
Okay. So remove the word students.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, remove the word students.
Students and in the second to last,
Second.
second paragraph,
Yes.
last sentence.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay. Wayne?
Mr. Conway knows legally what's best, but I don't know why employees would skip a chain of command. I don't know why a teacher would be going to the police department without their principal or superintendent even knowing the situation occurred. I don't know why our policy wouldn't immediately say, just like on 51A, there's a chain of command who we as a teacher reports to, and that is not to the local police department first, but that is to a individual either assigned by the principal or the superintendent or directly to them. So
So
this
I'll
sounds-
say, so even under 51A, which is suspected abuse and neglect, and those are the mandated reporting laws, the law states that mandated reporters are required to report suspicion of abuse or neglect to the Department of Children and Families or law enforcement. It does not say they are required to report it to school district officials first. Their duty to report is to the Department of Children and Families. In an institutional setting, the department allows you to have a procedure, not a policy, because policy cannot usurp law, okay? But it allows you to have a procedure for institutional reporting. However, in the event that a teacher, for instance, and it doesn't, the law is a little different here, I'm just trying to give a parallel to it. In the event that a teacher said, I suspect abuse of a child, and went to a principal and reported that, but then felt like nothing ever happened and they never reported to DCF, that teacher has still not fulfilled their legal requirement. They could still technically be held liable for not reporting that. Now, would that ever really happen in an institutional setting? Highly unlikely. It would be more the principal who became aware, who did nothing about it. Okay? The law, specifically Chapter 269, Section 18, as it relates to hazing, duty to report hazing. This law makes no distinction between students or staff members. Whoever knows that another person is the victim of hazing, whoever, doesn't matter, is defined in Section 17 and is the scene of such a crime shall, to the extent that such person can do so without danger or peril to himself or others, report such a crime to an appropriate law enforcement official as soon as reasonably practicable. Whoever fails to report such crime shall be punished by a fine of not more than $2,000. So the policy leaving the students there is technically accurate in accordance with the law. Procedurally within the district, we would want students to come and report, and we would expect they would come to those to report.
As we would with employees.
Their requirements, though, by law, are that they report it to law enforcement.
And procedurally speaking, I, as a school committee member, I don't want to leave you two out to dry. I don't want to hear something happened in a math class. That teacher went around you guys, you circumvented, they go to the police, and now in the police log, something occurred at Pentucket that you two weren't aware of at all because we don't have, and I'm talking wording and semantics here, a procedure that allows you two to be informed right at the beginning of any particular incident.
So in our annual trainings that all staff complete every year, it goes through the expectation that they're required to report this to either DCF if it's suspected abuse or neglect, or hazing is report to law enforcement. However, they should report it to police, they should report it to building principal and administration in conjunction.
Particularly because we never know
Prior
the
to
extent. If they come to us first, we may not know the extent to which things are going on and what's happening on the outside. It might take some time. And I would also just, as we're talking about this, I put it in, and not surprisingly, because this is an MASC policy, but you've got Ipswich, Carlisle, Framingham, Somerville, Attleboro, Wellesley. There's, most of the districts have that exact wording in there. for
Students
them.
and employees, because that's consistent with the actual law. And yet
So
procedurally,
should
we
we
would want them to come to
rescind
us.
the amendment based on that information?
I withdraw the amendment.
Well, you just have to vote it down, because it's already been seconded, so we just vote it down.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, so I'm going to go through with having us all vote under the amended, getting rid of the students and keeping it as employees of the district are obligated by law to report incidents of hazing to the police department. So to vote yes for that change, okay, seeing none, no? Vote no on it? Okay.
Wayne, did you vote
Wayne, are
no?
you abstaining?
Negative.
Negative, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we're back to the original motion that's already on the floor, so now we can vote on that one.
Okay, so now we're going to vote on the policy as originally put forth as students and employees of the district are obligated by law to report incidents of hazing by the police department. So can I have a motion to accept it as it was?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Wayne?
Yeah, if we're going to the letter of the law and be concerned about what's mandated by law as opposed to what we want teachers to do procedurally, then we might as well stay to the letter of the law the way it states now.
Yeah, I mean, it applies in a few different instances. I'm thinking of even just if there's a lockdown, right? It's procedurally, anybody can call a lockdown. However, we would like to know what's going on before that happens. I mean, it's kind of that same thing applies in a few different situations. Yeah, I think you can't not follow the law.
You couldn't hold someone responsible. We couldn't discipline a staff member if they contacted the police directly, because the law states that is their ultimate
We're
responsibility.
talking about the physical and mental well-being of
Yeah.
a child.
Okay, so can I have a vote to accept the policy as originally proposed?
It's
Okay.
adopted.
Thank you. Okay, so the next policy is JICFB, Pentucket Regional School District Anti-Bullying Policy. And it says, please note that this policy was written in conjunction with the PRSD anti-bullying plan that was submitted to the state in 2018 per Mass law. So can I have a motion to accept that policy?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Joanna?
So in this one, we have sections labeled B through, I think, F, but we actually don't have a section A. So I think perhaps that acts of bullying and cyberbullying are prohibited, that boldface
Is A.
is supposed to be section A. And then the other kind of issue I have is that you have this section of definitions that I think, like you have these definitions, retaliation, aggressor, bullying. I think those really should probably be before you get into sections A, B, C, D, etc. So in acts of bullying, you have this retaliation definition, aggressor, bullying, cyberbullying, all the way down to target. And those are kind of definitions that help you understand the document. So I think this should be organized as definitions and then section A, acts of bullying and cyberbullying prohibited. with those bullet points, and then you go on to section B through F. And then the other one issue is you actually kind of have two paragraphs on retaliation that begin with the bold-faced word retaliation. I think they should be combined into a single paragraph. It's the definition of retaliation. So this is just, it's a big policy, and it's just the organization of it.
How does amending, oh, sorry.
Emily?
A is missing.
How does amending this affect
The plan.
what was already put into the state in terms of our, like? do
Well,
have-
we put it in,
Yeah, I'm just wondering. if-
we put it in based on what was approved at the time,
Yeah.
so that's not, if we change it afterwards, we change it afterwards.
And we have to
Yeah.
do it every 2 years anyway, so.
Correct.
If
So
we
I think
change it
that
now,
the
we can.
flow of the letters,
Yeah.
A, B, for instance, follows sort of the sequence of an investigation or a policy for that matter,
Right.
right? So, in
Okay.
that there's sort of the definitions of what the acts of bullying are,
Uh-huh.
which would be A, essentially.
So
There's-
acts of bullying should be labeled as section A? Would you say?
Is that what we had? Yes, I think so, right? Because then it defines what are acts of bullying.
Okay.
The following bold type are sort of the key words and what those acts are with
Yep.
further description, including some further definition about hostile environment and retaliation, for instance, because those two are acts of bullying. And then bullying and retaliation may lead to discipline. So if you do these, this is one thing that would happen. How you report it, how it's investigated, how it's determined at the end of the investigation, and then closing that and follow-up. So from C through F follows the sequence that we would want procedurally the district or any administrator to go through. Like this is the flow, essentially the flow chart of any sort of
Yeah.
issue that comes up. So we
Yeah.
define it first. We explain that this is serious, there's consequences, how it's reported, how we investigate it, how we determine, and then how we finalize things.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yep.
It was just a matter of what is section A specifically, like,
So we
Because
can add an A to
I-
acts of bullying and cyberbullying.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense based on the flow of everything else.
right. And then I think that, the retaliation, you just have these two paragraphs on retaliation.
They're not the same, though. The second one has also is prohibited at the end, other than that, the duplicates.
Right, I just think it should probably be retaliation, take the definition, which is in the second the second instance has the definition, so it should like say retaliation is any form,
I see.
Definition.
and then follow up with that sentence, retaliation against any person is prohibited.
So the first retaliation
Under
is
section
basically
A.
saying retaliation is an act of bullying. That's basically what it says.
Right.
And then the second one simply provides further definition of what retaliation could be.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So I was just thinking those should be
Yep.
combined.
Take it out of the second one and
Yeah.
put it into the first
Into the
one.
first
Take the
one.
content from the second, the language, and put it into the first.
Right.
That
Okay.
makes sense. Yep, yep.
So those are my
Yeah.
only issues.
And none of our content changes, and,
No.
and we don't change the flow. That makes sense to me. I get that.
So we're going to keep retaliation up in the front.
Yes, it's still gonna be under section A, but where retaliation is under hostile environment on the second page, that wording is gonna be added to the wording under section A.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
Joanna, is that what?
Also is prohibited.
And so C becomes B,
No.
D becomes.
No.
Nope.
All the
No, everything
all
else
the
is fine.
sections are fine. B,
Okay,
C, D, it's just
okay.
you don't have a section A right now.
Gotcha.
It was omitted somehow.
Yeah,
Maybe the A and X became A.
yeah, I'm sure it was just when you're cleaning up the documents, things move.
Yeah.
So we could, I can make a motion to approve this policy with, the.
With the change of the
changes.
language of retaliation to be added to the first paragraph.
Yeah, and the addition of a section A.
Yeah.
Okay. Second? Is there a second
Second.
on that motion? Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Okay. I just have one question before we go on to the next one. On the previous page, there's hazing definitions, which it looks like it's policy JIC FA-E.
Yeah, we haven't approved that yet.
No, that's just, but I don't know if we even really approve that, because that's mass law. We don't have a say in changing the language of that, or that's just how
Okay.
the law's written, so that you can reference it on the
Okay, so I
JFICA
just wanted to
hazing
make sure it was
policy.
addressed because it's
Okay.
in the packet.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that one's all set. So the next one is JICJ weapons. Can I have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
A
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? The next policy is JIHB, interrogations and searches. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
I just had a question on this.
Yeah.
So this is probably for Brent. Now that we have a school resource officer, because I know this was written before we had a school resource officer, I just want to make sure that everything in this is still valid.
Yep.
Okay,
We actually added, if you can see, number 3 in the beginning,
okay,
interrogations by police. So we added number 3.
yep,
The school resource officer, if so employed, will follow the roles and responsibilities as agreed to in the memorandum of understanding, which is a separate document, which
Okay.
is also required by Mass General Law. I say that with 99%.
We have one.
I know we have one, and it is definitely a suggestion. If not, it may very well be required. Between the Pentucket Regional School District and the local police department for which the agreement is with. So, when he's in this building, he is a police officer in uniform, and that's let that, or she, whoever it may be. And they function that way, and they do not change. They're always a police officer when it comes to interrogations or police. So
Okay.
if they're present for an interrogation versus a conversation, if they're interrogating, they know they need to follow police procedure, and we need to protect the students to say that we may need to have a parent present if it's an interrogation. And that's different from the school resource officer involving themselves in conversation with kids about incidents and issues as they might investigate something. It's different from an interrogation.
okay, so they can talk to students?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think we'd say, in all of our experiences, our threshold as a school is so much lower than it is for law enforcement. So any time it comes to an investigation, they always prefer that we go through and we do all the pieces and only involve them if necessary, because their threshold is so much higher.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just concerned with question 1, because it kind of alluded to that the school resource officer could almost never speak to a student.
Yeah, and I think it's the difference between an interrogation and questions are different.
We've run into, I've run into numerous instances where you might have a student who's on the outside who's involved in a legal situation.
Yeah.
An officer might come to the school, and at that point, I'm acting as that child's guardian.
Right.
And that child has to give approval, and if it involves their parents, something between the student and the parents are not always notified of that, if the student's willing. If the student's not willing, then that officer is denied access, unless they have a,
Just cause.
it's a probable cause,
Any other questions? Not seeing any. All in favor? Okay. The next one is JJ, which is co-curricular and extracurricular activities, which is up for second reading. Can I receive a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Joanna?
So I wanted to make sure in the second sentence of the first paragraph where we put the participation on the basis of race, color, sex, gender identity, does that include everything? Because pregnancy is not in there. I don't know if it needs to be. So Brent, this is probably a
We
question
added
for
that
you.
based on what people asked for. I don't think anyone had asked for pregnancy.
I think a couple years ago, didn't Mass put out a bulletin?
I mean, we have a
Yeah,
separate.
there is a pregnancy
We have a
policy.
separate
Okay.
policy about pregnancy?
So it doesn't need to be in
discrimination
here.
and whatnot. So I don't think
I don't
so,
think
because
so.
I think the
Okay.
pregnancy policy covers it.
It's a little difficult rounding third base and pregnant. Kind of slows you down a little bit.
They could do it.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, not seeing any. All in favor? Okay. The next policy is JJA, student organizations. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second,
I'm sorry, so it was Marie and,
Anybody know why a couple of fire trucks just went up the thing? Well, while you guys are doing this, I'll go find out.
Great, Dick, did you second that?
I did.
Okay.
Who made the motion?
I did, Mary Ann did.
Okay, Marie, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions, Joanna?
This, when it says in the last paragraph of the first section, refer to district hazing policy, the policy is JICFA and not,
Oh, there's an extra letter?
there's an extra F,
Okay,
so it should be JICFA.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor? Okay, the next policy is JJE, student and staff fundraising policy. Can I have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Okay. The next policy is JJF, student activity accounts. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
There's another one.
No blanks.
That's like the board
Although we're probably doing practice and driver training. It's not a call.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
they go a little faster.
It also, I get a page.
Okay, any discussion on the student activity accounts? Not seeing any, all in favor? Okay, the next item is JJH, student travel regulations. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? The next one on the agenda is JJIF, which is athletic concussion policy. Is JJIFR, athletic concussion regulations, formerly JLCH, Pentucket concussion policy. And this policy is written and mandated by the state. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
So I just want to say that this is like the policy that every school district has, as well as the regulations. It was formerly that other Pentucket policy, but the state has since mandated its own policy that all school districts are asked to adopt. So that's why the change from the Pentucket policy.
And that's why the regulations are in our policies.
And that's why the regulations have to be stated as part of it, yeah.
Okay. Those are my only
Is
questions.
that, it's, okay, so we're all set? All in favor? Okay. The next policy is JK, student conduct, formerly known as student discipline. This is up for a second read.
I think you missed one. actually.
Yeah, I think you missed.
Copying on the back. Sorry. JJJDN. Sorry.
Concussion is so big.
Athletic expenditures.
So JJJDA, athletic expenditures and user fees. Can I receive a motion?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? J what?
JJJ,
3 J's.
3J,
And then a DA.
DA?
yeah.
JJJDA.
And I-
Athletic expenditures.
They make it easy.
Fees.
Okay.
Can I receive a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, so now the next one is JK, student conduct, formerly known as student discipline, which is up for second read. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? The next item on, the next policy is JKA, corporal punishment, which is up for a second read. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? The next one is JKKA, physical restraint of students, up for a second read. Can I please receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Joanna?
I think maybe a couple of bullets were actually lost in this, because the first bullet, where it starts with appropriate responses, then there's a semicolon. So I think where it says methods of preventing student violence is supposed to be bulleted.
Its own bullet.
I think, just based on how the rest of the document is written. And then on the fourth bullet down, it's the same situation where you have a semicolon.
Methods.
I think methods is supposed to be another bullet.
I think you might be right.
And on the first bullet, or which will be second now, where it says methods of preventing student violence, serious injurious behavior, you talk about the CNS1S planning. I was just curious what that is. Is it referenced, is it supposed to be capitalized, CNS1S?
I remember talking about it.
So Brent, do you know what that is, the CNS1S planning?
Yeah, it is often referenced within, I don't know that I can give you the actual acronym for what it is.
Do we need to be referencing it in this policy, I guess is my question. And is it supposed to be capitalized?
It's not. Everywhere I'm seeing it's lowercase.
It's always lowercase, okay.
Yeah, often relating to like sort of suicidality screening
Okay.
is what it relates to.
So leaving it like that, that would be understood by somebody reading this policy?
Well, the policy itself, maybe not. It's then, because the policy is basically referencing the superintendent will develop procedures to identify what to do. So if our procedures were more spelled out, that's probably far more important. Because really the only person who actually has to understand what CSNS1S is the superintendent. Therefore, what we write, and we have it written, the plan must reference what we do, for instance.
So I guess my question is, are you comfortable with what's here in reference to that?
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and it looks like wording that Duxbury had specifically used. I mean, it's definitely a type of emergency planning.
It just keeps coming up with suicide.
Someone on TV is going to send us a note.
Should we put that in parentheses? So it doesn't look like it's, I mean, it doesn't look like it's a typo, but
Parentheses may make sense.
like including,
Yeah, parentheses around including CNS, including that phrase, including CNS1S planning, would all be in parentheses?
Sounds good.
If we don't know what it is,
But I
This
don't
could
know
be
what
one
it
of
is.
we
those.
should just take it out.
I would be hesitant to take it out. We would be more inclined
Maybe
to
a
spend
second
time to
read?
make sure we know what it means.
Yeah, we could come back to
This one back on the, I'm not comfortable voting for something that
Okay.
has.
Yeah.
okay, so
something
we'll
that
do
none
a
of us-
Fair
second
enough.
read on that. We'll bring that one back in August.
Yep.
That's not a.
So do we have to not approve it, or
We vote.
No, just table
Table
it.
it.
table it? Okay, so I'll make a motion to table JKAA.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Okay, the next one is JL, student welfare. That's up for a second read. Can I please receive a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Joanna?
Under reporting to authorities, then it says suspected child abuse or neglect. Is that supposed to be bolded? Because then you start a sentence, it says any school official. So as written, it doesn't really make sense. So I was thinking maybe that is supposed to be bold, it was part of the heading. So it says,
Yep.
the way it
Some kind
is
of-
read, it says suspected child abuse or neglect, any school official or employee, like those, that does not
Something.
go together.
It's a-
That's right.
So I don't know where that
something.
belongs.
Needs to stop and then start with any, just like you said.
It should be suspected child abuse or neglect,
Then
all
some
in
type of
bold with reporting to
punctuation.
authorities.
and
That's
then
what I was
any
wondering.
school.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
That was all the heading.
Yep,
But-
So we're
We can
just
just
putting
make it
that in
all
bold
bold.
print?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And then, in the next sentence, in that same paragraph, it says, in accordance with the law, the district shall establish the necessary regulations and procedures to comply with the intent of the act. What is the act? Is that,
So the act, so it's got to be Mass General Law, an
Yeah,
act
so
The
relevant
one
to.
above it, yeah.
So, and that's what I was sort of referencing earlier to our earlier conversation, is that we as a school district can use what's referred to as institutional reporting
Yeah.
to say, here's our process, you need to come and make sure you report this to, building principal or administration, whatever.
so should it read the intent of the law? Or is act correct?
I mean,
I don't know what act it's referring to.
it could be
Yeah.
the abuse, the act of abuse, the act of neglect, or is it the act of
I thought it
reporting?
was
No,
just
it's
as listed.
the act, like
In the
a
first.
51A.
legal act under the.
51, the 51A that's mentioned
Correct,
in the sentence
yes.
before it, that's the act. No,
That's the law.
Acts
the
and
law.
resolves
Oh.
are different than laws.
Yeah.
right.
Those are session acts and reviews. I think she's probably right. You should probably make it a law.
Intent of the law.
Yeah, if you change the word act to law,
I think
then-
she's
or
probably right.
laws,
Yep.
plural, laws consistent with the district's responsibility to the students. Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Okay, so all in favor of the first change of putting in bold print, second paragraph, suspected child abuse or neglect, and also in the second paragraph, changing the word act to laws. All in favor of that amendment? The next one is JLA, student insurance, which is for second read. Can I receive a motion to accept that as written?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Okay. The next one is JLC, student health services and requirements. Can I please receive a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Any discussion?
This is
Joanna?
just a simple typo. Near the bottom of the first page where it says student illness or injury, in the second line where it says to call the student or of possible, it should be or if possible.
I'm sorry, where's that again? Oh, down at the very end?
yeah, I got it.
So get rid of or?
Oh, it's the,
Instead of,
No,
it should be
yeah.
if.
Right, if.
Okay. Or injury?
Do you want to see where it is?
Or
What's the intent of the sentence? It's wording.
Okay.
Go to I.
Any other discussions? Not seeing any. All in favor of accepting the policy with the amendment of changing that line to for the student, or if possible, provide the transportation?
Or if, okay.
Or, all in favor? Okay. The next one is JLCA, physical examinations of students. Can I receive a motion to accept that policy?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion?
In the first line, there's an asterisk after BMI, and the asterisk doesn't seem to refer to anything that I could find.
is this supposed to reference this down
You
below?
want to know the acronym?
No, I know what it stands for, but it says BMI asterisk, which means you should have an asterisk at the
Put
bottom.
an asterisk down here, this is
But
already.
I don't think we
Yeah.
need the asterisk at all.
Yeah.
'Cause I think most people know what BMI is.
Put it down the bottom, people feel better about it.
We'll just change BMI to what it actually is.
Yeah, I think you can just remove the asterisk and leave BMI as it
Oh,
is.
BMI is up top.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, BMI up top
So
is an
the
asterisk.
asterisk, the original asterisk, looks like it was a note, and the note was Department of Health Regulations call for vision screens in grades 1 to 5, and one's between 6, 8, and one's
Oh.
between 9
So
to
that's what's
12.
below.
So the asterisk was removed from below.
Yeah, we should add the
Must
asterisk
have gone off the
to
page.
department, per department.
Yep.
So you just need the asterisk there.
Okay.
And then in the paragraph before Department of Health Regulations, it's just switching between semicolons and commas. It should just be all commas in that paragraph.
So I see two
There's
semicolons.
two semicolons. Yeah, it's just, there's a mix, semicolon, comma, semicolon, and it should just all be commas.
And I'm sorry, are you talking about the 5th paragraph?
Yes, when it
Says-
starts with the school nurse.
Yes.
So it's of students, semicolon, return to class rate, comma, the number sent home, semicolon.
Right.
So you want both of those semicolons
They
changed?
should be commas.
to commas.
It's just a list.
Any discussion on that? Was everybody good with changing that to commas? Okay. Any other discussion on this policy? Okay, so everybody can vote on making 2 amendments to this policy, or essentially 3, changing the 2 semicolons to commas and adding an asterisk before the Department of Health regulations on the bottom. All in favor? Okay. The next and last policy is JLCB, inoculations of students. Can I receive a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Okay, great.
I'd like to say thank you to the policy subcommittee.
Yep.
This is a lot of work, and
It's a good July meeting policies. This is,
there's a lot of policies.
So we
It's a
only
nice
have
job.
one coming up for a second reading, and it's, well, actually the third reading, which is going to be the physical restraint of students, which is the one that we tabled, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's going to look for third reading. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is volleyball.
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So volleyball, as you may know, we have been combining with Georgetown. And prior to that, we were combining with Triton. After 1 year combining with Triton, and that all had to go to the school committee for approval. And our understanding was it was approved. After 1 year at Triton, though, Triton had enough students that they didn't need Pentucket anymore, so we went to Georgetown. And Georgetown, their program has grown. Last year, we were actually supposed to have our own team, but we did not have enough student athletes to participate, so we again stayed with Georgetown. This year, Pentucket has enough student athletes and will be competing independently. What I wanted to make sure of is that we are still all okay, or there's no questions about us competing independently versus us competing with Georgetown or Triton, which was approved. The way it's written by the school committee is that the school committee has to approve any new sports that's added. So in essence, in my view, this was approved 2 years ago, whenever this started. And we don't have to bring it back up, but I just wanted to see if there was a difference of opinion, and if there is, to have that voted so that these student athletes can compete for us.
Teacher's contract.
Say it again.
Teacher's
is that for-
contract? Amend the teacher's contract, we're gonna have to.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Well, I was going to go with the PAT first on this, but we also, this would require, in the agreement, it would require us also to add on volleyball, because volleyball is not, is not included as stipends in the contract. However, they've been getting paid.
Well, I mean, I imagine you'll negotiate what cohort that this
Yes,
will fall into.
absolutely.
Okay, so Emily, you had a question?
I assume assume that that Georgetown also can field their own team now, so we're not like
That's correct. Yeah, we
leaving
would
them
not,
abandoned either? Okay.
in a sense, we've kind of been, and this is in no way meant to be anything against Triton, they had a program, it grew, it's what you want to have happen. There's not enough space for us. We went to Georgetown, they took us in, very nice of them to do. Their program has grown. And our program, we have the numbers now to have our own program, so that's what we are looking at this fall.
All right.
I think this is great news for Georgetown, Triton, and us, but I just, budget-wise, how are we with transporting the team and uniforms and all that? Because we did this in the spring with crew, and a lot of kids were excited, and there's no crew.
So the difference.
So we have the budget for it, and.
Yeah, it's not, so even with the crew, it wasn't, we didn't have the budget, but the crew
Right,
situation
but-
was, right, Haverhill
Too many people.
they said they had too many folks,
Yeah,
which was not the information that had been shared with us at the selectmen meeting. In this instance, we do have the funding for it. We can take care of any transportation needs that there
and
are.
uniforms and all that.
Yeah, there's a purchase order waiting there for it.
We're waiting.
In deference to the superintendent, I think I would rather have a vote, because I think all the previous votes were entered co-ops. I think you might be better off just voting to
Okay.
make volleyball a varsity JV sport right now, and then if we have the numbers, we have both. If we don't, we just have the varsity team. As for the funding sources, we do still have a little money left over in the athletic receipts from people paying their gate receipt and athletic fees.
Okay,
We've been dedicating some of those funds to replacing the track and tennis courts when they come. It's a
Yeah.
savings account. But we're a little bit ahead of the game there, so we could allocate some of those funds. You'd be fine.
oh, great. I guess my concern was more not that crew was a budget issue, but that we had got some kids excited, and then,
And then pull the rug on it.
right, and I didn't want to do that if there was a
Trust me, I
budget
know.
issue here for volleyball.
No.
So what kind of motion do we need for this?
Move to add volleyball as a varsity and JV sport, like.
I just have a question. On the agenda, it's not up for approval.
So I think you have to amend the agenda.
I think we need to amend the agenda to get,
I move to amend the agenda to say discuss/approve next to volleyball section.
Second.
Business
Second.
E.
okay. All in
Then,
favor?
oh, sorry.
Okay, so all in favor of amending the agenda to vote
This is just girls, right?
for the girls?
Girls
volleyball?
volleyball.
Girls.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll add that
Okay,
to
so
the.
boys
now
play
we can
volleyball.
move
It's in the
forward
Olympics.
now with voting for,
Now I move that we add girls volleyball as a varsity JV sport,
Second.
pending numbers.
any other discussion? Okay, not seeing any? Blaine, you look really confused. Do you have any questions?
So that was Emily.
I thought at this time-
Marie second.
Most schools have policies for all their sports, a minimum number of athletes to run any sport at each of the three levels. And I thought at this time, I don't know how much people know at this table, the numbers that participate in volleyball, but I think it's a good idea at some point in time that we set a minimum number of participants before we run any sport. I mean, if any particular sport is 6 athletes to run the sport, and I say that's probably a little too expensive a run for 6 people. And the minimum, we'll say, for that particular sport being 12 or what have you. But I think it needs to start here, that's the way it is in most communities, that we set the minimum number of participants before we can fund at any level. Otherwise, they eliminate it temporarily at that level. Example, basketball. If basketball, it's 12, freshman JV varsity, and they only have 11 participants for freshman and JV. They drop one for the year, and you lose a coach for the year till the numbers are back up to norm. But without a minimum number of participants, we could be running hockey with 7 students, and each one of those, because of ice time, et cetera, would cost us $25,000 per student to run the sport. So I'm suggesting for us, whether it's coming from the AD, whatever, that volleyball, as baseball, basketball, football, gets a minimum number before Pentucket can financially, reasonably field the team.
So if I may, the document we actually have, I believe, is a set of procedures, athletic procedures, that was created by the school committee some time ago.
The athletic policy, yes.
So that might be something we could include, look at collectively or in subcommittee in conjunction with the athletic director. And we could look to amend and put those in there. Because there is a document that already exists.
But probably not numbers for volleyball
Don't think I'd recall seeing that.
and
numbers.
crew or jujitsu.
I don't think any of
So
the
since
sports
it's
have
new,
those. Yeah.
it's something we probably
Jiu-jitsu.
should.
No sports have a number. It's usually the athletic director works it out with the coach.
Really? But that's not the case for other schools.
We have to
Yeah,
just.
that's how it's been done here. But
Yeah.
your comments are
I think
well
we
worth
change,
saying.
I think definitely, I'm a firm believer, we should change that, leaving it up to an individual to make his own personal, his or her personal choice from year to year.
I think the policy subcommittee should look at the athletics.
I agree.
This is our biggest one, Jay.
I'll make a motion that
At
you
the
join
girls'
us.
volleyball is a JV varsity sport we have not voted on.
Okay, so I guess we need to have a vote then to vote as girls volleyball to be you said JV varsity sport?
Yes.
Am I wording that correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's before we know what the minimal numbers are?
Yeah,
We're not going with minimal numbers initially.
We're going to look at that in
we're just
policy,
making
Jay.
them available.
Yeah,
Whether they
make them
actually have enough,
available.
whether they have enough kids to make it playable is the
Okay.
second phase, but that, we don't know that yet.
Okay, so I guess we have to add that onto our agenda as well as a vote? Or is it it's part of the volleyball?
It'd be part of the volleyball.
So we don't need to vote to change the agenda, so we're just voting to,
We voted
Make-
to change the agenda, excuse me, to
Discuss
discuss
approve.
approve.
okay.
Now Emily made the motion to vote to have a girls' volleyball team as a JV varsity sport.
Right.
And I believe I seconded it.
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor?
Oh, just finish it, so.
I'm sorry?
I just want another point of interest. Any particular reason you just threw freshmen out, didn't concern a freshman level when softball, field hockey, basketball, baseball
No, there
levels?
was no reason.
And do we have facilities for 3 levels? Or do we run it the same? Should we, since it's a broad spectrum thing we're entering in now, why don't we enter a broad spectrum if participants allow possibly 3 levels?
Yeah, I was just going with the athletic director had said we might have enough for a JV team. Freshmen never even came to the conversation, but your point is taken.
Even if there were, there's only one sport using the gym in the fall, that would be volleyball.
Joanna?
So with most of the teams, we don't actually field freshman teams. We call them JV1 and JV2.
I know that's at Pentucket,
Yeah.
and that's only for certain sports when a particular
So
school
I
can't
don't think,
run
I
it.
think saying we have freshmen and JV is sufficient because we're not a school that's large enough to have an exclusive freshman team for almost any sport. So we don't do that. I think aside from football, all the other teams, baseball, soccer, they call them JV, they just call them JV. Because once you say you're freshman, you commit to a freshman schedule, and you actually don't have enough schools in the area to play with a dedicated freshman schedule. So all of our sports here.
How long has
And no
that
one older
been?
than a freshman could be.
It's been
For,
since my-
you're saying all the Cape Ann League schools, none of them can run a freshman program, or very few?
They don't,
I'm very ignorant of this because
Yeah, I can speak only about this year. I know that football started, they had 4 games maybe,
Yeah.
because no other programs had.
yeah, and I mean, I have a child who just graduated, so for the 4 years he's been playing sports, spring and fall, all of the sports have been JV, JV1, JV2.
I understand
but
that's
they're all
your experience through Pentucket.
JV. Yeah.
I'm just looking at numbers now, in the present, in the future, and of 13 other schools in our region.
I think if we get more information from the athletic director, we could probably get a better history. Or,
So are we voting or tabling this until we get
Well,
more?
we still
info?
very much would appreciate a vote. in order
Vote, because
to-
once you vote it, I can approve the purchase of the materials they need to start
Up and running.
in a couple weeks.
Okay, so I'm going to request a motion, hopefully I word this correctly, that we have a motion on the table for girls volleyball JV1, JV2,
No, it's just.
JV.
JV varsity.
JV
They
varsity.
can
That's
split
Emily's
up how
motion.
many
Okay,
they want, they can call them.
okay, so Emily's motion stands.
I
Yes.
second.
Okay, and then second, so all in favor?
Why not, boys?
Okay, thank you.
Boys can.
Okay,
I don't know.
back to public comment. We're still good on that. Okay, so we're gonna go to executive session. There's 3 items here: to discuss strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Second item is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Item number 3, to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. We need a roll call vote.
We need a motion first?
Oh, motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Okay, roll call. Wayne?
Yep.
Dick?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Lisa? Yes. Marie?
Yes.
Emily?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to be coming back for 2 more items, which are we have to go through the contracts. So we'll be back. We'll be back.
Once you get to know me better, one of the things you will find out is
Did your battery die?
All day battery.
Did your battery die?
All day battery. Yeah, all day.
Oh, somebody got stopped for doing something.
Going too fast, no doubt. Huh? Of water? We can get one on the way out. We're almost done.
5 minutes.
We're going as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
2 votes, Lisa.
Come over, go hang out at the fire station, give them a real segment.
Okay, so we're back in session. Do we need a roll call? No? Okay. So we have to take 2 votes. The first one is, I need a motion to accept the para-educators contract.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and the second one I need a motion for is non-union personnel contract adjustments. For the superintendent.
Assistant superintendent and business manager. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, so can I receive a motion to adjourn?
All right, good work, everybody.
Second.
All in favor?
All right, good work, everybody.
See you again.
We have gavel.